Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
All right, welcome to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a fantastic broadcast, lots to talk about, and certainly with the weekly show, we try to educate the public, we try to educate our policymakers, our union members and leadership across the country, and we featured a who's who in labor and energy on the broadcast. This week's no exception. This week is a special broadcast. We're going to be talking for the majority of the show about the Shale Insight Conference. Marcellus Shale Coalition presents an amazing conference. And this year we're doing it in Erie, Pennsylvania. And our guests on our broadcast, Dave Callahan, President, Marcellus Shale Coalition, also a board member of our Energy Education and Awareness Initiative. Dave, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, JDoc. It's great to be with you today.
It's great to have you. And John Bane, who's also no stranger to the broadcast, Director of Government Affairs, EQT Corporation, also the chair of the executive board for the Marcellus Shale Coalition. John, how are you?
Everything's going well. I appreciate having us on again.
It's great to have you. And first of all, and I'll kind of go back and forth. Dave, if you would, to our listeners, okay, what is the Shale Insight Conference?
Sure. Thanks again. The Shale Insight Conference is our annual conference that the Marcellus Shale Coalition holds. We're in our 13th year. We've traveled around the state to various locations, several years in Philadelphia, several years in Pittsburgh, and now for the past two, going on our third year now up in Erie. It's a gathering of energy leaders, energy industry participants, labor, government, and more. It's where everybody all comes together to talk about not only the current state of affairs in the industry, but what the future looks like. Over those 13 years, we've averaged around 1,100 people per year. Obviously, during and after the COVID years, things have dropped a little bit, but we're bouncing back in a nice way. We're going to get back to those numbers hopefully this year. We've got a fully subscribed exhibit hall where you can see all sorts of new technology, products and services that are really propelling the industry forward. And of course, there's lots of sessions for plenary sessions, main stage sessions, and technical breakouts as well. It's a place that if you want to know what's going on in the industry and what the future is going to look like, that you'll want to attend.
And having said that, John, what excites you about this year's conference?
I think this year, and we've been seeing it slowly over the past several years, but now it seems to be ramping up a lot more, would be that basically the direction we're going with unconventional natural gas production and energy as a whole from a 30,000 foot view. People have always said that energy transitions over 100 years. So we went from wood, went to coal, now we're with gas, and now we're seeing new and exciting things such as hydrogen. So I think, it will be a topic of conversation at the conference. Also looking at things such as carbon capture, which will go along with hydrogen production. So we're really moving into a new space within the industry. And I think it's exciting. And I think we're going to see a lot of new faces this year because of that.
And so I'm looking at the itinerary, okay? And it's a 3-day conference, Tuesday, September 26th, 27th, and 28th. And man, it's action-packed. I mean, this is an intense itinerary, incredibly impressive. I'd like to ask you both, and Dave, I'll start with you. What is your role in the conference as the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition? And when I say that, I'm talking about from an organizing premise to to the actual operations when it's going on.
Sure. There's everything from soup to nuts. We were talking about football ahead of time, so I'm going to use a football analogy. There's a lot of blocking and tackling that goes on before the conference actually takes place. Securing sponsorships, securing speakers, making sure the venue is set up, all the blocking and tackling. But day of, it is just a work for those 2.5 days. It's a whirlwind of activity. We try to give our conference attendees the best experience possible, whether it's ensuring that they've got sufficient time for breaks, sufficient time in the exhibit hall, making sure that things flow smoothly on the stage, making sure things flow smoothly as well in those technical breakouts. We try to offer something for everyone, and something for all of our attendees. It's something that literally takes 8 to 9 months of planning before we pull it off every year. We'll take a month or so off after it concludes, and we'll start right back at it again.
John, your role in the conference.
Yeah, I mean, Dave and his team, they do all the hard work. I have to give them all the credit. I will be there. I'll offer some remarks during the conference and actively participate in several panels. We have our board meeting and executive board meetings, but at the end of the day, it is Dave Callahan and his team that do just a fantastic job pulling it all together. And you'll see it firsthand, Joe. It's amazing.
Oh, when we're there, I'm going to come up to you, and I'm really looking forward to going and I'll say great job, and you can say to me, wish I had some help. I can stop doing it all myself. I looked at the itinerary, and it's absolutely incredible. Let's talk about, you have a nice group of sponsors, okay, that really obviously are committed to what's going on. I'd like to kind of pay them some kudos, if you would, Dave. Talk about the sponsors who make it happen.
Sure. We've got sponsors from companies like John's company, EQT, CNX, Chesapeake, Range Resources, Equitrans, and many, many more, Olympus Energy. There are sponsors from inside of the Commonwealth, outside of the Commonwealth. We even have companies that don't even operate in Pennsylvania, from Ohio and West Virginia, who are sponsoring. And what does that sponsorship do? That allows us to put good programming together on the main stage and in the breakout sessions. What you're going to see when you attend their JDoc is you're going to hear from a number of leaders from the leading companies, not just in this basin, the Appalachian Basin, but nationwide. So you'll hear from a couple CEOs, you'll hear from chief operating officers and more. And as John said, it's not necessarily about here's what we're doing. Of course, we're grounded in what we're doing right now. I've had a sneak peek at some of the themes of what some of the folks are going to be talking about on the main stage. They're going to be talking about what the future holds. They're going to be talking not just about product services, but about how each and every day this industry evolves. Each and every day, things are getting more and more sustainable, more efficient, and it's just astounding to see how things have changed and will continue to change into the future.
Well, it's interesting because, it is amazing when you look at the sessions. We're going to get into the sessions in a little while, but you have a very, there's a lot, carbon capture, a lot of topics that are really focused on lowering emissions and new technology. When you're putting the itinerary together, when you're talking about the actual topics, because this is where, in a sense, the rubber meets the road, because you're talking about the future of energy, okay? And Marcellus Shale, there's so many resources there. It's incredible. Who decides the actual, when you talk about the topics and the sessions themselves? Because in a sense, you can look at that. There's like a roadmap to the future of energy right there. Talk about that, John, if or Dave, if you will, in regards to putting those topics and those sessions together.
Yeah, I'll let Dave get into more of the details, but I think we've evolved to the point where this is the premier energy conference for our industry, and a lot of it is people reaching out to us. And I'll kick it over to Dave from there to get into some more details.
Well, it's truly a collaborative process. It is thinking about what are the themes that could be exploring those themes with the various speakers and sponsors, but it's also about who do we want to see on the stage? who do we think that the conference attendees want to hear from, regardless of what they talk about? And I will say this, it took me a while to get to this. We have some strong union voices on that stage, both on the main stage and in the breakouts as well. We've got Jeff Nobers from the Builders Guild in Pittsburgh Works today. We've got David Butterworth from Pipeliners 798 coming up to talk as well about infrastructure. That voice, that strong union voice, is such an integral part of not just what we do as an industry every single day with some of our advocacy efforts, as well as our the efforts out in the field to build and operate the infrastructure. But it's important for people to see that on display, that partnership at the conference. And that's why it took me a while to get to this as well. Why I'm particularly proud that you're going to be there, with Krausey, and you're going to see it firsthand. And you're going to be able to talk to people from all sorts of facets of the industry and hopefully gather good information, good content to help feed for future broadcasts and podcasts.
Well, I'll tell you, and I first of all want to thank you, Dave, and John, for making it possible. The invitation is much appreciated. We're as excited. One of the things that, as part of our board, our Energy Education Awareness Initiative, taking our media platform, educating, the listeners and, of course, our policy, but also really we talk about, presenting individuals that are at the forefront, showing the faces of the places, okay? The general public never gets to hear that stuff, and therefore the narrative is always slanted. I know because that was me, 2-3 years ago. And so it was a lot of our labor people in the energy sector, boiler makers, steam fitters out there. When the PES refinery went down in Philly, and it was so confusing, that got us involved. And one of the things, so we're excited as heck about it, to meet the leadership, to meet the members of the coalition, and really to be educated at the session. Okay, but one of the things we want to do is make aware a platform that we all have. This is a platform that we created, and our board of directors is represented by labor and energy. We're getting more energy as you see on a daily basis. You talk about a balanced board, but we just want people to understand in the industry that we have a platform. I think we're a credible voice, and it does not take. And the reason I say that we talk about the voice, it doesn't take much to educate somebody in common sense. A regular person, okay, that in the details and the common sense in energy. We have so many important topics that are out there. Okay, our natural gas industry, largely responsible for the lowering of emissions, if not completely responsible for the great work we've done in the United States of America in lowering emissions. We've talked about the Page Coalition, and little teeny things like some of our foreign friends took them 1 year to destroy all the progress we've made in decades. And so these are information as well as carbon tax. We also want everybody to know that there are resources available. Can't wait to change this, and together we'll do it. So I want to thank you, Dave and John, for making it happen and for giving us that opportunity to be out there. I was lobbying a little bit to get it. Now I can't wait to get to Erie, but I lobbied a little bit to get it to Roxbury in Philadelphia here. Just thanks so much for the invitation and the platform. By the way, your team is absolutely incredible. I mean, I have been a part of conferences before. I took part in a conference in Philadelphia from the ground, and I know what kind of absolute, how many layers and layers and layers of responsibilities it takes to put this conference together. And I shout out to your team because they're doing a great job.
They're the very best, and JDoc, you're gonna see many union representatives there. I've talked about it before. John's talked about it before. We have a number of construction trade unions as members of the coalition, whether it's the operating engineers who are also sponsoring, the Boilermakers, the pipe trades, and more. And as I said, Pipeliners 798. You'll be able to pluck those people out of the crowd, pull them over, record a few comments, and share it with your listeners down the road. I'm really excited for your presence there. I think it just seemed like a natural fit, again, to show how we are so aligned on these issues, and how if we work together, as we continue to work together, we present such a strong unified front for common sense energy policies. To steal a page from John Bane's book, to unleash what we have here in Appalachia, and not only serve our own needs, but also serve the needs worldwide.
You know what I find amazing? I've had this conversation. So I was doing a broadcast recently, and it was one of our legal broadcasts. But yes, the Democratic Party in Delaware County. Okay, and we were having a conversation about labor and energy on the broadcast. And what I find absolutely refreshing is that I literally, and I wonder where the narrative comes from, because this guy's obviously a big Dem. Okay, his name's George Beatty. Okay, and we go way back, but the conversation, and it's when I'm talking about a lot of the issues, okay, it's very amicable. In other words, as soon as I left that broadcast, I'm like, we got to get this guy on the Labor and Energy Show, because we have, the lack of adversarial conversations that I've had with members of, our community down here, individuals who you would think might be against, what people are trying to get, common sense and energy. I can honestly say it has been fantastic, and I think a lot of that may have to do with, a lot of these people, and I'm not talking about individuals who you could, you could show them the Holy Grail and they don't care about it. I'm talking about individuals that just aren't totally in tune with everything, and they understand, the details. They understand, they understand the principles, but not the details. And so I think there's a great opportunity. What I love to see, Dave, I saw your op-ed with Rob Baer, okay? And I love to see what's going on with, with that collaboration, okay? That, in a sense, partnership, that relationship, kind of taking off, because that's really what it's about. Utilizing both the resources of both to educate and utilize our, listen, I call it influencing the influencers. Okay. In labor, we have a lot of manpower. We have a lot of resources. Obviously, energy has a lot of resources. Together, I think it's a great marriage. And I think that it's a common sense choice. One of the things that you and I completely agree on is that, first of all, even on the show, I don't allow a lot of rhetoric on the show. We've had some individuals, as soon as they start getting into, really extreme stuff, everybody gets shut down, right? I mean, whoever's listening automatically thinks it's crazy. And so I think we've done a good job, but we're just at the tip of the iceberg. And Marcellus Shale is such an important, part of what's going on. We now have, and I know you saw Chet Thompson, a Metro American petrochemical manufacturers. I mean, they're dealing with the issue of the electrical vehicles mandates. Okay, one of the things, and that's a great example, and in what we're doing, Dave, and a lot of the issues that we're tackling, people have zero idea of what these mandates can cause and the domino effect, how it affects jobs, the future, and all those things. So I think our goal is to educate. We want to meet a lot of your members and learn from them. And I literally can't wait till the conference. I've never been to Erie, and we're going to get up early and take that trek to Erie, PA, and we're really looking forward to it. We have a couple minutes left in this segment. I think let me just take a quick look. We have about a minute. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break. We'll have more from the Labor and Energy Show with Dave Callahan and John Bane in just a minute.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan are that they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
And the big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Gentlemen, welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. We've got a great broadcast. Ecstatic to have Dave Callahan, President, Marcellus Shale Coalition, John Bane, Director of Government Affairs, EQT Corporation, talking about the Shale Insight Conference that's coming up on the 26th, 27th, and 28th of the month. We're all incredibly excited. So much going on. Let's talk a little bit about the sessions and the topics themselves. I mean, because they give you an idea of where this, where the industry's going. John, you had said that this is a massive conference. It's a primary conference in the industry now, and you had mentioned hydrogen, and one of the sessions is hydrogen and carbon capture. Keep on rolling. What the latest developments mean for the natural gas industry. John, touch on that a little bit and how important that session is, and give us a little insight on it.
Sure. And I think it goes back to what I mentioned previously, that we are, changing as an industry, and a big part of it will be using hydrogen as a feedstock for manufacturing, for power generation. And I think, a lot of people don't understand what that means, because I certainly didn't when I heard it initially years ago, but now we're talking about it all of the time. And blue hydrogen is basically produced when you have natural gas and you take the carbon from the natural gas and you have hydrogen. And that can be used as a feedstock, as I said, for manufacturing, for power generation. The carbon then can be captured and injected underground. And that's something that we're working on in several states, including Pennsylvania. We have had regulations passed in West Virginia. So that's another thing, right? From a legislative standpoint, we are going to have to change some regulations in order for that to be a possibility.
Dave, if you would, jump in.
Yeah, and that's an area, and John, great description, first of all, but that's an area where, we're dealing with policy needs, as John has already pointed out, the legal, the policy, the regulatory needs, what the framework needs to look like to allow it to happen. But there's also the technology. The technology is changing day by day, week by week, month by month, about getting more efficient, making things more sustainable when it comes to processing hydrogen, creating it, and dealing with the carbon. And not just injecting it, possibly using it in other forms. It's an example of something that'll be explored in great depth during like a 75-minute, and it sounds intimidating, but a 75-minute session when you're talking about a project like that and a topic like that might not be nearly enough. That's something that could fill its own conference, but it's just one of the many examples. If I could, I'd like to talk about one other thing that when we were talking about common sense policy, from a policy standpoint. John and I, it's been great working with John as the chairman. He's been a great boss, a great leader for the organization. And I think he and I are 100% aligned, as I think the three of us are 100% aligned, where energy independence, energy reliability, energy sustainability, making sure there's good jobs to support that. It's not an R or D issue. It's right down the middle. Strictly right down the middle. And so we're proud that we've got folks from both sides of the political aisle that will be offering comments. West Virginia Senator or U.S. Senator from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, and we've just secured some comments from the United States Assistant Secretary of State for Energy, who will be talking about things like LNG and what U.S. energy strength means for the rest of the world. Balance. That's what we're looking for. We're not picking one side over the other. This is something that applies to Americans in their kitchen table discussions, and we want to present that at Shale Insight as well.
Absolutely, and I always say, and I end a lot of our shows by saying it's not a union issue, shouldn't be a political issue. It's a human issue. Okay, and so it's well said, and certainly one of the things that I want to bring labor to the table is to utilize, first of all, to be educated. Okay, number one. Okay, number two, but at the same time, a lot of our energy sector labor leaders, as you said, are very educated on these issues. A lot of their workforces work in the plants, they work in the refineries, they work at all these places. But it's the entire labor community. And I think what's interesting, everybody knows. When you get that sense when you talk to everybody. You very rarely get anybody who's even when it comes to labor, who doesn't have a good idea that whatever's going on right now, that can't last. We have to come up with these solutions that we are, and so that's been a great gift, and that's been a great learning and experience for us. It's been great to get the cooperation. One of the next segment. The next session, renewable natural gas, decarbonization for a blended energy future. What is renewable natural gas, and of course the decarbonization for a blended energy future? Dave?
Sure, that's another breakout session that'll go into great detail. Renewable natural gas, or RNG, methane derives from the decomposition. This isn't a science experiment, but allow me, please. Methane results from the decomposition of organic material, whether it's organic material that was deposited far underground 400 million years ago, like the Marcellus and Utica shales, or dairy waste, farm waste, food waste. Some of that stuff can be turned into methane. It certainly happens at landfills as well. That's been generally referred to as renewable natural gas. It's sort of the same components, and some of the companies involved in the organization are trying to tap into that to help supplement. Now, is it going to support every home in Pennsylvania, every business? No, its reach is very, very limited, but it's about making good use of what's there, and it's about making good use of what technology is out there to get that product to market. And JDoc, we see the same thing in another energy source. That's called geothermal. The same companies who have figured out the technology to go a mile, 2 miles underground, 3, 4, 5 miles out laterally to tap vast resources of gas in the Marcellus Shale, Utica Shale formations, they could utilize some of that same technology, some of that same know-how to drill down and tap into geothermal energy as well. Just another example of how this industry is so broad in scope and how it really has its eyes on the future. It's interesting. You mentioned, a science project. How closely, John, does your company work with the scientists on new technology? Because one of the things that we've learned in our trek is that energy can be a complicated language, okay? And translating that and on the broadcast, one of the things we try to do is learn as much as we can. And there's a good example right there about something that might be complicated and in a sense translated to our neighbors. You talk about that kitchen table conversation that we're all having. If there's one person at that kitchen, by the way, I was that person at the kitchen table about a month ago with my two cousins. We were talking about the Phillies when Trey Turner was still in his slump. We were at a restaurant and I walked in and I said, well, I'm just preparing for my Labor and Energy show. They were looking at me like a little sideways, but by the end of that conversation, we're like, wow, how about that? They were first surprised that I knew, right? And that I had that information. But, talk about that conversation with the scientists and working close with scientists to create these new technologies that will take us into the future, John.
Let's start with this. I don't work closely with the scientists, but we have very, very smart people on our team.
Sure.
Our executive vice president for new ventures is going to be speaking at the conference, and he's going to talk about some of the things that we are doing in the organizations that we're partnering with. An example is the Appalachian Regional Clean Hydrogen Hub, which is an application we put in with the Department of Energy to fund hydrogen projects. But we're working with the Gas Technology Institute. We're working with a company called Battelle and others. And that's where this technology really, they're the folks that drill down and get involved with, the scientific community. And also universities are very helpful. Academia is critical to what we all do. So you'll hear from our executive vice president. I think he's going to get into that a little bit at the conference. But yeah, there are some very, very smart people that reach a lot of different factions of this industry. And again, at Shale Insight, I'm sure we'll have some of those individuals, and hopefully you'll get to pull them in and have a few conversations.
If I can, you might hear from some academics there. One of the facets of the conference is that we have University Research Showcase, where for the last several years, we highlight research that's being done by students and faculty that's of great interest and assistance to the industry. So we're going to be featuring 8 different researchers, their projects. We're going to welcome them on the main stage, but more so, they'll be in the exhibit hall with some of their materials, with some of their posters showing what they've done, the research they've done, the practical application, and folks going through that exhibit hall will be able to hear from them firsthand what they're doing, what their interests are. And while that's good for us, that's good for them, it's our hope that it also spurs more people who are looking into pursuing a degree to look into pursuing a degree that's a part of our industry. Just like for you, JDoc, and for the folks and our friends in the construction trades, we want to ensure that next generation of workers are there. So whether it's a scientist, whether it's a boiler maker, a steam fitter, a pipe fitter, an engineer, we want to make sure that the next generation and the generation after that know that this energy source is going to be around for a long time. It's going to continue to evolve, but there's good family-sustaining, community-sustaining jobs and opportunities from all walks of life available.
One of the things, and I'm so happy about this conversation that we're having, because we're going from New Jersey to Washington, D.C., across to Pittsburgh and up into West Virginia and Ohio, is that taking that chain of they talk about scientists, you talk about the individuals at your companies who are delivering the message, and of course labor. and because everybody, this is a complicated, industry and process, and there are so many new technologies that are coming forward that it takes a teamwork and dealing. The words "work together" is such an, that's been such a big part of John Bland, and I know John Bane. Do you know John Bland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And Dave, I know you know him also. He said something to me one time, and I think this applies to what we're talking about now. And I wish all the listeners would understand this. The more I learn from the talented people like yourself and individuals that represent the energy community, the more I feel like I'm in the twilight zone when I think about what John Bland said is, why aren't we all working together? Normally we would be working together, but for some reason the narrative has gotten shifted. I look at one of the topics we're going to talk about is carbon capture. Okay, one of the things you're going to talk, one of the sessions. Okay, and John Bland said to me one time when it was PES, when we had that situation in Philly, and he said, "When do we stop working together?" It's clear that what our energy community prioritizes is, not only providing great power sources, but also within a low carbon future. Okay, and lowering emissions and all those things. Okay, and believe me, I came into this thing, with my eyes open, seeing what's going on. It's when I look at the itinerary for this conference, it's a large portion of what's going on. Okay, and blazing the trails into a low carbon future, and at the same time being able to use some of the greatest resources in the world on the planet Earth at Marcellus Shale. So it certainly is, refreshing. And I want the listeners to understand that, we should all be working together for these common sense solutions. Let's talk a little bit about carbon capture and that session. Okay. One of the sessions called Carbon Capture and Underground Storage, Injectivity and Containment Testing. Dave, if you would touch on that.
Again, I think when we talked about another session that was somewhat related to this in hydrogen development, hydrogen production, and carbon capture, we recognized that there was some policy issues in technology. This seems to be purely focused on the technology. A lot of it deals with geology. You're going to hear people that understand the geological requirements for carbon capture. But there's also, whether they get into it or not, there's also the practical implications of how do we get pipelines developed? How do we get the right people to work on those pipelines? What are the requirements for those pipelines? Is CO2 a different product to ship compared to natural gas, compared to oil, compared to anything else that we ship via pipeline right now? There are many technical considerations, and there are some of the best and the brightest of minds working on that right now from across the sector and across the country. And so this is just another one of those opportunities to dig deep into those issues.
And having said that, okay, because people are going to be hearing a lot more about carbon capture as the months go on and the years go on. It's a technology that's being developed. You mentioned pipelines, okay, and one of the things, and this is a little off, but not really, permitting reform, okay. Sometimes it takes almost a decade to get a project underway, and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Okay, and we talked about permitting reform on previous broadcasts, but John, if you would, let's start that conversation.
Yes, thank you. And I'll start with this. In 2022, we saw the lowest pipeline build out since 1995. We built 3% of the pipelines that we were building in 2017. Again, that's a major problem, and it does come down to the issues of permitting. If I asked you to invest in $1 billion project and then told you it was going to take 10 years, would you want to invest in that? I mean, I don't think you would. And we have decision makers in Washington that can help solve this problem. They've taken some smaller steps so far. But again, it comes down to working together, because it's not just our industry of natural gas production. it's energy as a whole. As we build out solar and wind and other forms of energy, you need transmission lines. They have the same issues that we do when it comes to permitting to get new transmission lines. The same pertains to broadband, which should be a little more important for me because I'm having some technical difficulties, as you can hear in the background. But it's going to take investment, and the carbon capture piece of it is huge. But again, we talk to individuals who want to help the environment, they want to lower emissions, and as soon as we say pipeline, they don't want to support any effort that would create a new pipeline, no matter what the positive benefit of a pipeline would be. So we face the issue of, one, it takes a long time to go through the environmental standard applications, which we don't want to skimp on that. Don't get me wrong. We want to do the extensive permit applications. We just want them reviewed in a timely manner by one agency instead of having a government agency go over the same application, 3 or 4 different times. The other problem we have is litigation. Every time there's a permit approved on a controversial project, it is challenged in court by organizations that do not want our industry to succeed. And that is a major problem as well. And hopefully in Washington, they'll be able to figure out a way to fix the permitting issues responsibly, but allow people to do business. We shouldn't be talking about the lowest pipeline build out in the country since in the year 2022, when we have issues where we need to get gas on the water, ship it overseas to help our friends in Europe. Russia took 10 BCF a day of natural gas off the market, which cost Europeans $800 billion. When you look at those numbers, they're staggering. And it all comes down to, if we have the political will to do permitting reform, to put pipelines in the ground, to build LNG facilities, we are the solution, and we can provide energy security, not just for the United States, but for the entire world.
Over the summer, in a bipartisan agreement, Congress and the president agreed on a debt ceiling deal that included permitting reform provisions. How's that impacting, what's going on? We had, and we have a new board member, Peter Holran of Enbridge, and, they're still having issues. Talk about that, if you would, Dave.
Sure. First and foremost, I think I've said it on this program before, it shouldn't have to take an act of Congress to get a much needed pipeline approved. It shouldn't take that plus all the delays, all the challenges for something that investors put the money behind. There's clearly a need for that product to be shipped. John did a great job of discussing and sharing, how pipeline projects have really, really dropped off precipitously. We need more capacity to get more product where it's needed. Certainly overseas, definitely to areas of the country, you've heard me say it before, like New England, where New England is energy starved, and energy starved to the point where, I'm going to keep saying it, where at one point there was a tanker loaded with Russian gas in Boston Harbor, ready to supply the region. We need that infrastructure. Those are not just good jobs. Those are sound environmental investments as well, because we've seen how increased use of natural gas has led to much lower CO2 emissions, in particular from the power generation sector. And it's also led to cleaner air in general. We've got the facts to back that up. We've got the information to back that up. It's a great investment. It's a great resource, but infrastructure is the key to unlocking it.
What's interesting, because I believe there's a 4.5 year environmental process. Okay. When you're talking about permitting, we talked to Pete Horan and the Line 5 replacement project. Okay. They're trying to upgrade the current, the current line. Okay. That's going to improve safety and all those things. And the reservations that the project goes through have put a major roadblock in what's going on. And so the narrative is what it is. What do we, what can we do, labor and energy and the general public? What can we do? In a sense, this is a big part of common sense and energy, but what can we do to help improve that process?
Well, John, feel free to back me up. I'm going to go really short here, but what we could do is continuing to advocate at both the federal and the state level for permit reform, for regulatory clarity, and also when there are local decisions, statewide decisions on individual permits, to weigh in on those permits together to show the benefit, to show the need. John.
Yeah, you're spot on, Dave. Joe, it's just a matter of everybody coming to the table, working together. I know I've said it before, but this industry and Marcellus Shale Coalition, we're open for conversations with anyone. But when it comes to permitting, again, we want to do things right. But we want to do things in a manner which allows us to plan our business. Because if we can't do business and plan that business, why are we here, right? And we need that reform in order to thrive as an industry.
Let's do this. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to have more from the Labor and Energy Show in just a minute.
My name is Eleanor Northaft. My husband was in the union, Local 282. As I'm getting older, I'd like somebody to fight for me. So I called up Retiree First.
Hi.
And I got Brooke.
So nice to meet you. I'm Brooke. I'm an advocate at Retiree First. I've been working with Eleanor for 3 years. She was one of my first calls. I helped her with transportation to her doctors, getting her glasses reimbursed.
Oh, they are pretty fancy.
I'm basically just answering any questions she has.
And I always have a lot of questions.
Not too many.
I have a friend there. I love it because I can depend on her to help me out in any situation.
Oh, I'm excited.
She always comes through for me.
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
And the big story on Action News.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome back to the Labor and Energy Show on the Jacob Media Network. I can't thank Dave Callahan, President, Marcellus Shale Coalition, and John Bane, Director of Government Affairs, EQT Corporation, enough for being on the broadcast. Guys, we got about 3 minutes left. I'd like to, and certainly the permanent reform issue. So it's so important for us to be able to get our projects off the ground in a realistic fashion. What you're doing in regards to the future of energy, I was looking at the itinerary for the conference coming up, and we talk about the ground zero for the future of energy development, and it's just such a great example. When I look at this itinerary, I look at a roadmap. Closing remarks in regards to the upcoming Insight Conference, Dave, if you will.
Sure. Again, it's a great opportunity to hear from industry leaders, policymakers, labor, those who are also involved in advancing the technology that is changing this industry every single day. And I'm just so glad that you're going to be a part of it. I'm glad that my chairman, John Bane, will be a part of it as well. It never disappoints.
John, if you will.
Yeah. It's going to be a great conference. It always is. And I think, as I said at the start of the show, we're seeing this industry change and evolve, and it's happening quickly, and it's happening every day. The members of the coalition and our guests and members of organized labor, I think they're in for a great couple days and a lot of information to absorb at that time. But it's going to be a great conference.
And there's going to be a lot of socializing and networking also, correct? I mean, people meeting people for the first time. I heard Dave Callahan can be seen on the dance floor on occasion. It's just a rumor going.
No, I reserved a spot for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, I'm a terror on the dance floor. Yeah. Security, please. Having said that, if the Insight Shale Convention is September 26th, 27th, 28th in Erie, PA. Dave, if somebody wants more information on it or they want to attend, are there still possibilities for individuals to attend?
There's certainly time to register. You could take a look at our website, marcelluscoalition.org. You could click on there onto Shale Insight. But while you're there, I always put a plug in for all the resources we have there. We've got a ton of good fact-based information, just like you do on this podcast and broadcast. We like to share good, solid information that people can bring back to that kitchen table and have their discussions about energy.
Awesome. I want to thank again Dave Callahan and John Bane for being our guests here. A great job to the entire team. Going to be a very successful Insight Shale Convention. We're proud to be a part of it. Certainly, the Energy Education and Awareness Initiative Advocacy United. Shout out to Joe Krausey, who's my partner in this entire thing. We can't wait to get there. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Labor and Energy Show here on the Jacob Media Network. On behalf of Dave Callahan and John Bane and Joe Krausey, and a shout out to Kateri Kraus for making it happen, our producer in the booth. I'm Joe Doherty. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Welcome to Pond Lehocky, the largest workers' compensation law firm in Pennsylvania. With over 250 years of combined courtroom experience, we've helped over 100,000 injured and disabled workers obtain benefits, as well as some of the biggest settlements in the state. Even better, Pond Lehocky doesn't charge a dime until you win. If you've been injured at work, give Pond Lehocky a call.
The best way to describe Anthony, David, and Jan they're my brothers. I met Anthony at LA Fitness because I noticed that he had a Teamster's bag and his dad was a Teamster leader.
I'm a third-generation son of labor. My grandmother worked in a factory. My mother and father were both Teamster members. I don't think there's a trade that I don't have a family member in.
What's so big for me coming from a union background is what affects one member affects the entire membership.
A lot of people can relate to the issues that individuals deal with. We pride ourselves on empathy.
The big value that's always instilled in you if you grow up in a union household is the importance of brotherhood. People that lean on each other, that rely on each other.
When we were building this business, having that background and knowing what matters most to the union members is really what we use to drive and build out Retiree First.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Google TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
For the big story on Action News,
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.